Hours after Putin put boots on the ground in Ukraine, Beijing sent fighter jets soaring near Taiwan. Will the island become the next Ukraine? Taipei reacts to those concerns. Western countries are again leveling sanctions on Russia amid the Ukraine conflict. But some worry those penalties will make China a more powerful competitor on the global stage. And for those watching our full episode, one mother of 8 found chained to a wall. Beijing has punished a dozen local officials tied to the crime, but one expert says it's far from case closed. A Chinese city is going bankrupt. Records show it spends 6 times more money than it takes in, all as real estate prices take a nosedive. And between the world's 2 biggest economies, how do the cost of raising a child compare? New research shows Chinese parents have to put in near double the work hours to afford a baby, compared to US couples. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Chenny Wu, in for Tiffany. The US, China, and Russia, the balance between the 3 most powerful countries on Earth, is going through a new, dramatic change. 50 years ago this month, US President Richard Nixon saw division growing between China and the Soviet Union due to the fight over communist world leadership, and he took a trip to Beijing. That visit eventually changed the decades-long dynamic between the 3 world powers and caused communist China to become a quasi-ally to the US. And together, the two countered the Soviet Union. But now, the US is starting to realize that communist China has a lot more in mind than just economic cooperation. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, is exerting its authoritarian influence over US politics, businesses, and civilian lives, taking aim at democratic values in America and across the globe. The regime is also eyeing an invasion on Taiwan, a democratic-ruled island and US ally. Taking over Taiwan would mark a successful step 1 for the CCP's goal, to replace the post-World War II US-led order in Asia and even the world. This week, Russia's attack in Ukraine is likely to shift the balance once again. Will Russia and China build closer ties? Will China invade Taiwan? And in the worst-case scenario, will the U.S. get involved in a 2-front conflict, even against 2 superpowers that are increasingly working together? The world will be watching closely. Thousands of Ukrainians are fleeing their homes following the Russian invasion. And online, discussion is heating up over whether today's Ukraine will be tomorrow's Taiwan. If Beijing copies Russia and invades the island, here's Taiwan's response.
With war raging between Russia and Ukraine, a new statement from Taiwan's president. She says the island's military is actively monitoring the Taiwan Strait.
Our military's ability and will to defend our homeland is constantly improving.
Taiwan's defense minister says comparing Taiwan to Ukraine is like comparing apples to oranges, as the two are very different in terms of geographic location and geopolitical tensions. But he adds that Taiwan's military is keeping a close eye out for potential action.
We should take note if Beijing will have any moves following conflicts between Russia and Ukraine. We're paying close attention to that.
He notes Taiwan can reference Ukraine's situation, but his conclusion is that Taiwan should rely on self-defense instead of seeking help from other countries. Taiwan's defense ministry also released footage of military members on duty around the clock, ready for any emergency situation. The video features a variety of footage from military drills. At the end of the video, the Defense Ministry says the island will always prepare to the best of its ability and will fight till the end.
Tensions are hanging over Taiwan's fate as Russia invades Ukraine. Why is this island important for America? And how does it tie into Russia's attack? We hear more from Tiffany Meyer at CPAC, the largest conservative conference in the U.S., to see what people there think about the issue.
Concerns are rising over whether Beijing will invade Taiwan, following Russia's attack on Ukraine. Hours after Putin declared war on Ukraine, Beijing sent 9 fighter jets into Taiwan's air defense zone.
Right now, if I was in Taiwan, I'd be very, very worried because I think we're going to see action there. And I think the kind of explanations that Putin used to go and grab chunks of Ukraine are going to be very similar to the rationale that the Chinese communists are using to essentially declare war on Taiwan. So it is a very dangerous time.
Beijing claims Taiwan as its own territory and has been threatening to take it under control by force. That's despite Taiwan having its own military, constitution, and leaders. The Chinese regime has been sending record numbers of fighter jets near Taiwan since last year. How does this relate to the U.S.? Even though Taipei and Washington are an ocean apart, the island is critical for America's security.
The American people need to understand when and if she seizes Taiwan, there are massive, massive consequences for the U.S., not only politically and militarily, but economically.
Taiwan sits on a chain of islands stretching from Japan all the way to Malaysia. And this line of defense prevents Beijing from launching a submarine-based nuclear missile attacks against the U.S. Without access to the deep waters beyond the island chain, the U.S. military would be able to quickly detect and neutralize Chinese attack subs. Besides, America relies on Taiwan for producing advanced semiconductors, or microchips. These tiny chips power our daily lives. From fighter jets to iPhones, they wouldn't work without these chips. And Taiwan makes over 90% of the world's most advanced chips. Some have been raising concerns that the Russia-Ukraine war might be a distraction from a bigger threat, coming from the Chinese Communist Party. Many suspect Beijing aims to replace the U.S. as the world's most influential power. Charlie Kirk, founder of a major youth organization called Turning Point USA, gives his take on the issue.
The Chinese Communist Party is the biggest enemy of America, period, hard stop. I'm focused on Xi Jinping's reign of terror, not Vladimir Putin's at all. Russia could have been a strategic ally and asset to try to crush the Chinese Communist Party. Instead, we've allowed them to grow closer together.
Kirk believes America's top goal should be restraining and crushing the Chinese Communist Party.
Xi Jinping doesn't care if Putin invades Ukraine. He probably supports it, as long as he can go after Taiwan. So it very well might be a distraction. I think it is. But I'll say this again. The Ukraine fight is not the American fight. We should stay out. It is not our fight.
President Biden said even though the U.S. has provided Ukraine with over $600 million of defense assistance,
our forces are not and will not be engaged in the conflict with Russia in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight in Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies and reassure those allies in the East.
Kirk noted he sees the Chinese Communist Party as the enemy, not China.
It's two separate things. The people of China are wonderful. The CCP is evil, and it needs to be wiped off the face of the earth.
He added that even though he feels bad for the people of Ukraine, he believes all eyes should be on China.
China refuses to describe the Russia-Ukraine conflict as an invasion, saying the issue has complex historical reasons. At the same time, critics worry that Western sanctions will give Beijing larger influence over Russia and make China a more powerful competitor. Here are the details.
China called for talks Thursday to settle the Ukraine crisis. So far, Beijing has avoided criticizing President Vladimir Putin.
We have repeatedly stated China's position on the Ukraine issue. This issue has a complex historical background and reasons. The result we are seeing today is an interplay of all kinds of factors.
But in Washington, President Biden is taking a clear, strong stance.
The sanctions we oppose exceed anything that's ever been done.
U.S. sanctions are nothing new for Russia. In order to minimize the impact of Crimea-related sanctions, Russia has been trying to expand gas exports with China for the past decade. Just last month, Russia signed a 30-year contract to supply natural gas to China. The The two sides agreed that payment would be made in euros rather than US dollars, the standard for many international trade transactions. Back in 2014, the two countries signed another gas supply contract after 10-plus years of negotiations. Industry analysts believe that amid the after effects of U.S. sanctions over Crimea, Russia gave China favorable trade terms. That's under pressure from Beijing and Russia's own need for export revenue. Now, similar concerns are rising given Washington's ambitious sanction plan and the fact that many more Western countries will likely follow suit.
That means that Russia will basically only be able to sell petrol or gas or energy to China. China will have a monopsony on that. In other words, they'll be the only buyer or one of the only buyers of Russia's exports, which means that China will have incredible control over the Russian economy.
And according to Graceffo, the ripple effects of that situation may make China a more powerful competitor in the world economy.
So China now will become Russia's economic benefactor. Russia will be firmly within China's sphere of influence. And then the other benefit to China is that they will be able to produce products very cheaply because as a monopsony buyer, they should be able to dictate the price of gas and they won't have to pay world price.
Russia is a global oil superpower, one of the 5 biggest exporters in the world. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has already driven up oil prices.
On top of the oil trade, Beijing also approved imports of Russian wheat, a step that could dull the impact of Western sanctions. China approved the imports Thursday from all regions of Russia. The move gives Putin an alternative to Western markets, avenues that may close under possible sanctions. Russia is one of the world's biggest wheat producers, but until recently, China has shut out Russian wheat, allegedly for fear of possible fungus contamination. That ban was lifted earlier this month. The two nations struck the deal during Putin's recent trip to Beijing, where he became the highest-profile foreign guest to attend the Winter Olympics. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program on YouTube. Full episodes can be watched on our website, ntd.com/China-in-focus. You can also find out where to watch us live on cable in your city at ntd.com/TV or on NTD's partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, please click the link down below. Thanks for watching. Have a nice weekend.